The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Matthew. Jesus took Peter, James, and John his brother, and led them up a high mountain by themselves. And he was transfigured before them. His face shone like the sun, and his clothes became white as light. And behold, Moses and Elijah appeared to them, conversing with him. Then Peter said to Jesus in reply, Lord, it is good that we are here. If you wish, I will make 3 tents here, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah. While he was still speaking, behold, a bright cloud cast a shadow over them. Then from the cloud came a voice that said, This is my beloved Son, with whom I am well pleased. Listen to him. When the disciples heard this, they fell prostrate and were very much afraid. But Jesus came and touched them, saying, Rise, and do not be afraid. And when the disciples raised their eyes, they saw no one else but Jesus alone. As they were coming down from the mountain, Jesus charged them, Do not tell the vision to anyone until the Son of Man has been raised from the dead. The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
Where's the Gospel?
In today's Gospel reading on a high mountain, Peter, James, and John had a special experience of God's presence in Jesus. They sensed that in the presence of Jesus, they were in the presence of God. It was an experience of Jesus as Emmanuel, God with us. It was like a glimpse of heaven. That is why Peter says, Lord, it is good that we are here. That is why Peter wanted to hold on to the experience to make it last as long as possible. If you wish, I will make 3 tents here, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah. The Gospel reading invites us to recall those moments of special grace when we too had a strong sense of God's presence to us. Those times when the goodness of God, the love of God, broke through into our lives, and we were deeply touched. It might have been a moment when we were moved by some passage in Scripture that spoke to us in a very special way. A word from the Lord fed our spirit and immersed us in light. Or perhaps we entered a church and we had an experience of a presence that embraced us in some way and assured us that we were loved and cherished. We may have had an experience of God's comfort in a time of bereavement and loss, or an awareness of God's strength helping us in times of weakness. This sense of God's presence may have been experienced in and through the kindness of family or friends, or even the kindness of strangers. All of these experiences leave us feeling more alive, more hopeful, and more willing to go out of ourselves to others. They leave us transfigured in some way. We cannot manufacture these moments when God seems very close to us. They very often come to us as a gift rather than as something we have worked for. That was the case with Peter, James, and John. Jesus took them up to the mountain. They didn't take Jesus up to the mountain. It was Jesus. It was Jesus who took the initiative. As they followed Jesus up the mountain, they were not expecting anything unusual to happen. Yet, they had this wonderful gift from God on the mountain. This glorious moment when the veil between this world and the next was pulled aside, and they saw Jesus in a way they had never seen him before, in all his glorious divinity. All we can do is hold ourselves open to such experiences, such gifts from the Lord. They come to all of us, not frequently, but time to time. Perhaps it is when we are at our most vulnerable that the Lord blesses and graces us in this special way. That was the case with Peter, James, and John. Just before this moment on the mountain, Jesus had spoken to his disciples for the first time about his coming, suffering, and death. They all found it very difficult to accept what he was saying, especially Peter, who rebuked Jesus for speaking like this. In response, Jesus turned to him and said, "Get behind me, Satan." It was these disturbed and troubled disciples that Jesus took up to the mountain to grace them in this special way. In a very dark moment, the light of God shone upon Jesus and shone through Jesus upon the disciples. In our own dark moments, the Lord will often immerse us in his glorious light. When life is a struggle, it is good to be open to the way that the Lord may want to bless and grace us. He often takes the initiative to give us a sense of God's loving presence, especially in those times when the darkness comes over us. The Lord wants to touch our lives with his gracious presence. In the gospel reading, at a certain point, the disciples were overcome by what they saw. Says the reading, they fell prostrate and were very much afraid. Jesus then, we are told, come up and touch them, saying to them, rise and do not be afraid. How the Lord was with his disciples on that mountain is how he is with all of us who are trying to be his disciples today. He touches our lives, calling on us to stand strong and not be afraid. In the strength of his wonderful experience on the mountain, Jesus and his disciples were able to take the road to Jerusalem, even though suffering and death lay at the end of it. The Lord comes to touch our lives so that we can journey on faithfully and hopefully. Like Abraham in the first reading, he set out on a new journey in the strength of the Lord's presence to him, and the Lord promised to bless him and to bless others through him. Lent is a season when we stand back and allow the Lord to take us up to the mountain. It is a season when we invite the Lord to touch our life in ways that transform us more fully into his image, and leave us saying, it is good that we are here.